Hey everyone, this is Ali. In this video, we are going to practice positioning multiple images in HTML document using CSS. So without further delay, let's start. We can manipulate where the image appears on the screen. So we are going to make use of something called a margin left property, which lets the browser add margin to the left of the element, and it's gonna push the element all the way to the right until the space allows. Yeah, that works well with block elements. So first we are gonna change the display of this our image element to block, and then we are gonna apply margin left to auto, which is going to push the element all the way to the right. It's not visible here, but if I go back to, which is auto refreshing due to 1273000, so see, it's pushed all the way to the right. And there's another cool thing. If you go in the styles column, you can actually see the margin, border, padding values, and see the margin is taking 90% of the space. So that push the element all the way to the right. But what about if we want to keep an element in the center? So what we are going to do is we are going to add some interference, and we are going to use something called margin right auto, which is going to try and push the element all the way to the left. So when both of them are in picture, they're going to collide together in the middle and push the element right in the center. See, it worked beautifully. Okay, next we have to try and position the element or image in the center vertically. But first, let's see what happened here. So by using the display type block, what we did was we reserved the space left and right of the element. We reserved the entire row because a block element, if you recall, occupies the entire width of the available viewport for itself, whether it needs that space or not. That created room in which we use the margin left and margin right properties to move the element to the right or to the left, respectively. And since there was a little bit of competition here, it forced the element to settle in the center. But we cannot do this vertically because there's no way of reserving a space vertically using the same method. So instead, we are going to use something called a position property of the element. First, I have prepared a slide which I will show you, and it's very important and super useful in the future. So please pay close attention to what I am about to say. So the position property of an element has four values. By default, it's the static, which is the default, and there are three others: relative, fixed, and absolute. And they are used to position that element in the web page. How? Let's see. So first off is the static position. It lets the browser position the element in the normal flow of things. What is a normal flow of things? Normal flow is that it parses and processes an HTML document from top to bottom, placing each element it encounters one after the other. So if it encounters a block element, it reserves an entire row, positions the element, and moves to the next element. And the next element, whether it's block or inline, is going to be placed in the next line. But if the current element is an inline element, depending on whether the next element is inline, it's going to be positioned on the side if there is room. Otherwise, if it's a block element, it's going to be placed on the next line because the block element needs the entire row. What about the relative position? A relative position lets you move the element relative to its normal or static position in the normal flow using four properties: left, bottom, top, and right. What does it mean? Say I had an element positions right here on the top left corner in the normal flow, but I gave it a property left colon 100 pixels. So it is going to be shifted 100 pixels to the right relative to where it was supposed to be. So it was supposed to be at 0, 0, and now it's going to be positioned at 100, 0, 100 pixels to the right on the x-axis. And similarly, if I give top 100 as well, so the element is going to be pushed down vertically as well, right? Keep that in mind because we are going to use it. Next up is fixed. Fixed element is relative to the viewport, the entire visible content area of a browser. If let's say an element is assigned a left and right position of 100, it's going to be positioned 100 pixels to the right and 100 pixels to the left of the content area. And it's going to stay there. Even if you scroll the web page up and down, all the other elements are going to pass beneath that. It's going to be floating or flying in the surface above all the other elements. And it's going to remain in that area. Like if I scroll this slide, this fixed is going to remain here and the relative is going to pass right underneath that. And it doesn't leave a hole in the web page, so it's not part of the normal flow. It's completely separated from all the other web page, and it floats on top. Next up, the one that we are about to use for the image centering problem is the absolute position. And please pay close attention to the next line I'm about to say. Positioned relative to nearest positioned or non-static ancestor. What does it mean? That if it has nearest ancestor which has a relative or fixed position applied to it, then it is going to be positioned relative to that element. What it means is that if it is contained in, let's say, a div element, which is present in this area of left corner, then it is going to use its left, right, top, and bottom properties to move around within that container. A good example is that the absolute element, this absolute block, is placed relative to its positioned ancestor, which is here in orange. So if I have, let's say, left property of 100 pixels and top property of, let's say, 70%, so it's the top is going to shift it down 70% within this container, and left is gonna push it to the right. If no positional ancestor, then it is positioned relative to document body. And unlike the fixed element, it moves along with the page scroll because it is positioned relative to the document body, not the viewport. It is also detached from the normal flow though. All right, with that background in mind, let's go back and try to position the element vertically. So first what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a class for positioned ancestor, which we are going to apply to the div containing our element. And what I'm going to do here is first off, give it a position of relative, right? Which is, as we just saw, it's going to make it relative to normal static position, but we are not going to change the position of the div itself. We are just giving it a relative value to make it a positioned ancestor. We are going to use the absolute position on the child element to have fun with that. Okay, one more thing. So we need to give a height of 100 VH to the div element containing it. So the div occupies the entire vertical space of the viewport. Next up, what we are going to do is we are going to work on our child, and let's call it centered child. Okay, this part is a bit trickier. We are going to first start off with a position of absolute, which is going to let the child position relatively to its position ancestor. Next up, we are going to give it a top of 50% and left of 50%. Hmm. Oh, I was expecting it to move, but I forgot that I haven't applied the values, the classes to the parent. So I'm going to give it the position ancestor and the A element, which is containing the image element, a class of centered child. Okay, and yes, it is making a difference. So it positioned the image element 50% down from the top and 50% from the left. But what happened is that this is, you can consider, if you remember, we have this bounding box here. So it is basically positioning the top left corner of the element in the center, not the center of the image itself. So basically the element is starting, if I remove this border radius from here, you can see closely. So this point is in the center of the document, although we want this part to be dragged here. So that for that we want to use what is called a transform property, which moves the element with respect to its own self. And I'm going to give it a translate function, and I'm going to say move it 50% to the left. Using minus 50% means move it 50% relative to your own self, right? So it's going to move 50% of its total width to the left. And then I also want to move it up. So I'm going to do the same thing using the second argument, which is for the top, and I'm going to use 50% again. And see, the element is smack in the center. So if we can go to Chrome browser and look at this element in the inspector, we can see, okay, so this container div, the position ancestor, we gave it 100 VH height. So you can see the entire blue portion is showing a area that div is occupying. And you can see it's occupying the entire viewport. And this is positioned in the center using these three properties. If I change position absolute, it's going to do absolutely nothing. This is making this inside a position ancestor is making all the difference. Okay, a fair question here would be that why are we not using margin top and margin bottom to center the element vertically as well now? Because our parent div or the container div is now height 100 VH, which essentially means it is occupying the entire vertical height of this viewport. So let's see if we can get it to work. So if I go here and give margin top as auto and nothing happened. Why? Let me tell you why. So let me bring up the CSS document from the W3 organization and just look at the relevant portion here. Inline replaced elements, block level replaced elements, etc. The the section starts with if margin top or margin bottom are auto, their used value is 0, right? And in case you are wondering what inline replaced elements are, they are referring to elements like images where the contents of the image replace the placeholder after the initial render. And uh, so would it work for non-image components? Probably not, because the next section is about non-replaced elements in normal flow, right? And it has the exact same line. If margin top or margin bottom are auto, their used value is 0. So this is not going to work. But wait, don't close the video. You haven't even liked and subscribed yet, which you need to do right now. There is a way given on the W3C website. Let me bring it here. So no need to lose hope. They have provided a solution. So let me read it for you. So if all three of left, width, and right are auto, first set any auto values for margin left and margin right to 0. Then if direction, I'm just messing with you. I'm not going to read it all. This is too much ifs and buts, and that's why that part is a bit complicated. So let me uncomplicate it for you. Let's go back to Visual Studio. Yeah, so summary for that complicated math is that you can still center, align, and absolutely position element horizontally if its left and right properties have same values and has a fixed width, and vertically if top and bottom have same values and has a fixed height. even if it sounds complicated still, let me just uncomplicate it for you. So first off, we need to change this margin top to margin colon auto. And what it does is it's gonna combine the margin top, margin right, margin left, and margin bottom all into one margin property and assign the same value for them. So it's a shorthand for 4 lines of code. So margin auto means apply all margins in all 4 sides. And then we need to specify left and right properties having the same values. And the value that we are going to use would be 0. So first let me show you what right colon 0 does. Right? It places the element on top right. So let's first do the left colon 0 and right colon 0. Right? And we need to provide a fixed width. We'll come to that in a second. And then vertically, we need to do the vertical part. And for that, if top and bottom have the same values and have fixed height. So let's define top colon 0 and bottom colon 0. And what all of these do, let me show you, let's say by, so if I just leave bottom colon 0, the element is going to be at the bottom left corner. I'll show you what it means in just a second. Where's the element? Yeah, it is. Some sort of refresh issue. All right, so all that is left to do is introduce width and height. So the absolutely position element must have width and height, fixed width and height defined on them. So that's what we are going to do next. So if I say width colon 100 px, and for this vertical should have height requirement, so 100 px, and it's aligned smack in the center with just a few lines of code. And we can even make it even more shorter by using another combination property, which is inset, and assign it a value of 0. And what it does is it combines left, right, top, and bottom into one shorthand value, right? So this has the same effect, and we have the element smack in the center. So we have workarounds. You don't need to concern yourself too much with that complicated maths. And there's another even better way. But before going into its detail, let's first go to the browser and have a look at the inspector to elements. And here's our inner element, which is being shown here, and I would like you to concentrate here. All right, so the blue part in the center is the content of the element itself. And note that this border, this black box uh, defines the boundary of the element. So the something called padding exists between the content of the element and its outer layer, right? And outside the border exists margin. Margin is something that it's the distance that the element would keep between itself and the adjacent element or surrounding elements, right? So in this case, what it did was, since we were manipulating margin, so if I hover over margin, this orange part is representing margin in the content area. So the element has created a huge margin, like 644 pixel wide on each side margin between itself, and so it has kind of covered the entire div element with its margin, and it has forced the content area to be displayed in the center of the container element or the div element that contains it. So I hope this distinction is clear. With that, let's now go to Visual Studio Code and try out the next method that I was about to describe. So to do so, I am going to get rid of all that we did here. including position absolute, and show you the other way. And the other way is that this entire thing, this inline block and all the other elements that we have been seeing, they are uh, generally called, and this normal flow are generally part of what is called a box model of CSS. But there's another model called flexbox or flex, uh, generally known as flex, and we can do some CSS manipulation using that. I know we haven't covered it yet, but just see what how easy it is to center align an element using flex. So all I'm going to do is in the container div or the positioned ancestor, I'm going to say display, and originally it was block, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to flex, and here I'm going to say margin colon auto, and we are done. It is horizontally and vertically aligned with just 2 lines of code. Isn't it amazing? So we'll cover Flexbox in detail in later video or videos since they are big topics, but I think that was good enough for now. Next item in our list would be placing text over elements. And we have all the basic blocks existing. To do so, I'm going to get rid of this flex because that's something we are going to take a look afterwards. And let's start placing some elements that we are going to place on this. Since we are doing a beginner thing, so let's clean up a bit and let's make sure this image covers the entire container div. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this style here, and similarly I'm going to go to this image and I'm going to say width is 100%, and I'm going to get rid of this height, which is going to ensure the image is covering the entire div element. So if I go here, body div, so the image is now fully encompassing the container element. Right, so we can go here, add a text element, span, class equal to text overlay, and hello. Okay, now I'm going to introduce, okay. In case you're wondering whether this is an editing trick, no, this is a keyboard shortcut, Shift, Alt, and F, which formats the HTML document in one keystroke. So give it a try during your uh, overlay. Okay, and now I'm going to use the same absolute position thing to position the text in the div element in the container or the positioned ancestor div. So I'm going to use position absolute, and next I'm going to use left colon X, and it's beautifully placed on the top left. It could be better at 5 pixels, I think. Yeah, let's say I want to bring it to the bottom left corner. So what we can do is we can do another one, top. There are two ways to do so. Let me show you both of them. So one is to use the calculate method, and I'm gonna say 100% minus 5 pixels. Nothing happened. Something is wrong. Okay, let's see in Chrome. If we go here, if we go here, inspect. Okay, body. Yeah, yeah, this is taking the entire width, but oh, the div is of height 0 pixel. Why is that? Let's go back to code. And here, yes. So remember we talked that the position absolute disconnects or disjoints the element from the normal flow of the web page. So basically, these elements are not part of the normal flow or the web page itself. They are floating on top. And the height of a div is determined by height of its children. Since both of its children are floating, so the div has a height of 0. So if let's say I meant to not keep the image as absolute anymore as part of our initial cleanup. So now if we do, now this is working. See, hello world is now appearing near the bottom. So it needed to be some 15 pixels or something or 20 pixels to get it here. But even better way would be to, and this is because of the image's own margins and everything. So a better way would be to use the bottom property, which is going to use, which we can say 5 pixels. And yes, see, it's appearing right here. Now let's quickly try to bring it in the center. Right, to get things in the center, what we are gonna do, I'm gonna first do top 50%, left 50%, and you see the same problem. It is off center because its top left corner is in the center. So we need to use the transform, translate, and minus 50% to bring it to the left, and another minus 50% to make it rise up or move up of its own height. So now it is exactly appearing in the center of the page. We can also go and check in the Chrome browser, refresh, and see it's appearing right in the center. Right, that concludes our discussion on CSS positioning using HTML images and text overlay over top of images. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give a thumbs up, share, and do consider subscribing to be notified of upcoming new content. Thank you. Goodbye.